but it's unclear. Hello, everybody, if we are live. There we are. Okay. All right. Well, welcome, whoever is out there, to our community meeting. And the exciting news is that we're moving forward with 2 historic districts, and tonight is an important part of that because it gives us an opportunity to share information about what districts are, about the South Cumberland Heights Historic District and the Casa Verdugo Historic District, and then to answer questions and take your comments. My name is Jay Platt. I am the principal planner, or one of the principal planners for the city of Glendale. My focus is on historic preservation and design issues. So I've been kind of helping move this through the process. And a lot of you already know it's been a long process since these 2 districts were proposed. But we are moving forward. We're getting toward the end of the process, and I'll explain all of that to you tonight. Before I do that, I just want to acknowledge the strangeness of this situation because my friend Andrew Goodrich, who works for Architectural Resources Group, who is joining us tonight to talk about the survey itself, we're both going to be giving PowerPoint presentations, but we have no idea who is watching. We have no idea how many of you there are. We have no idea if you're even there, but I assume there are people listening to me right now. So it's kind of an act of faith on our part, but what we're going to be doing is kind of giving these presentations first and then opening up the phone lines for your questions. And this is very different from the way we've done this in the past, where we have the chance to meet face to face. We could gauge what we say to the things that are important to you. So what we're both going to try to do is give you a quick overview of historic districts and then the 2 districts that we're focusing on tonight. And then really the rest of the evening is going to be hearing from you, answering questions as best we can, taking comments. We'll be taking notes, and then I'll kind of explain the whole process to you in a second. So let me open up my screen to share. So that's just sharing the screen that we are looking at. So you just saw Andrew. Let me, nope, that's not the right one either. Sorry about this. Here we go. It's a button up here. Live and learn, they say. All right. Andrew, can you see this, and Eric?
Yes.
Okay, because you're the only people I can communicate with. So
I can see it, Jay.
Okay, and that's Eric Krause, our assistant director in the planning division of the community development department. And he'll be listening in and helping if needed. So between the 3 of us, we're here for you guys. So just moving forward, I put together a quick agenda. It's a pretty brief agenda, just 3 items. I'm going to start with the PowerPoint that we're looking at now, talking about what is a historic district, why do we have districts, what happens if and after a district is designated, and where are we now in the process. The reason I'm doing that is because it has been, 4 years since this whole process began for South Cumberland Heights and Casa Verdugo. There are a lot of you who may not be as familiar with districts as some other people in the neighborhoods. So we want to make sure everyone's brought up to speed. Then Andrew Goodrich from ARG will talk about the results of the surveys that were done for the 2 neighborhoods. And then, like I said, we're going to open it up to your questions. I'll give you that phone number in a minute, but first, I just wanted to, at the beginning of this, mention that this is kind of part of a 2-step process that we're looking at right now. Tonight is the community meeting where we hear from you, we answer questions. If you see that there are issues or errors or anything you're concerned about on the survey forms for your properties or about the district in general, this is your chance to share with us. And then we're going to bring all of that information to the Historic Preservation Commission, which meets on April 15th at 5 o'clock. So that's a Thursday evening, April 15th. And you'll be able to also participate in that. And ultimately, the HPC meeting is where it's ideal for you to call in and say, hey, I love these districts. I love this neighborhood. I support it. Or, oh my God, I hate historic districts. I don't want to have a historic district. Please don't do this. Or anywhere in between those two poles. Tonight, we're mostly focused on questions or answering your questions. If you want to comment on what you think and if you support or don't support, it's a free country. We're going to let you do that. But really, the focus tonight is on helping everyone understand what it means if these neighborhoods do become historic districts, and how, as property owners or people living in the neighborhoods, you might be affected. So, going on, the letters that you received in the mail that are probably why you're listening right now, that's how you knew about this meeting. The information about the two historic resource surveys and the information on the individual survey forms about your individual houses is located on the city's website. So if you haven't had a chance to kind of look at that, you might want to do that while we're meeting. So that would be at glendaleca.gov/planning meetings, plural, unfortunately, but planning meetings notices. Or you can scan this little QR code that I have up on the screen with your camera, and it'll pop that up on your phone or your iPad or your device, whatever you're using. And you can start looking at that information if you haven't already. If you do have comments and questions that you want to share with us tonight, the call-in number should be up on the screen at various points, but it's 818-937-8100. So 818-937-8100. So I'll move into the actual meat of this discussion at the beginning, talking about districts. And I'm not going to read every word of this because you have it up on your screen so you guys can have a look. But I wanted to share, the basic sense of what is a district, and why do we do these things, and how do they affect you as property owners. So the first bullet, which says historic district overlay zone, is the official definition of a district from the city municipal code, from the historic district ordinance that's part of that code. We call them overlay zones because it's a wonky technical term for the I'm sorry, I just got a notice that I'm confused, and I'm going to try to figure this out if I need to know anything. No. Okay, we're good. So it's a kind of a planning term for an overlay zone, but we just call them historic districts, just using the way, regular people talk about these things. And what it is an area that's definable. It's an area that has a boundary around it. And what's inside that boundary is a group of properties that are connected in some way. They're connected in terms of the time they were built. They're connected in terms of the history of the development of the neighborhood. And over 60% of those properties are going to be in a condition. They may have some changes, but they're not too changed, so that they can help tell the story of the neighborhood and how it developed. So the last part of this definition talks about how these properties are united historically or aesthetically by plan or physical development. So what does that mean? It means it's a group of properties that kind of tell a story, that have some meaning when looked at together. The important thing in a historic district is not every property in a historic district is historically important. No one famous or no one who made discoveries or is significant in history necessarily lived in the houses that you live in. The houses themselves may not be, the best example of an architectural style that might get them placed on the Glendale Register if you were interested in that. But they're nice houses and they look great in the neighborhood together. And that's why we kind of look to kind of protect them through this historic district process. The ordinance and the design guidelines were approved by the city in 2006, and we started designating districts in 2008, 2009, and we now have 7 districts that I'll show you in a minute. But why are we doing this in the first place? Like, what is the point of a district? And this again comes from the municipal code. And we have a variety of things. We protect the beauty of the city. We protect against alterations that might diminish, lower the area's character. We want to ensure that growth and development and change in the city is done in an orderly, harmonious way. Some people will tell you that historic districts stabilize and improve property values, and there are studies from around the country that say that that's true. We've never done that in Glendale, so we don't have that study. So I have to give you the caveat that I can't prove to you, no one could at this point, that it happens in Glendale. But we do get a lot of feedback from the real estate community and obviously from people like you who want to live in neighborhoods that are as beautiful as these, that there is something special going on in historic districts that could lead to that and could also lead to civic pride and neighborhood pride and all of that. So these are some of the reasons that we put into the code for why we do this. What I like to share with people is, personally, I think one of the most important things for people in historic districts is that you made a decision at some point in your life to move into a neighborhood that you liked and to move into a house that hopefully you like. And you've raised families and brought friends in, and these are places that are very meaningful for you. And what a district does is it gives you a certain certainty, a sense of predictability about what's going to happen. So when you live in a historic district, there will be changes, but they're not going to be such huge changes that you look down the street one day and you say, oh my God, what happened? 5 years ago, this neighborhood looked like this, and today it looks like this. So that predictability, I think, is a really important aspect of historic districts. And I hope many of you see that in your own neighborhoods. And I'm sure some of you who support the districts appreciate that and understand that. But I also want this meeting to be as much about people who are concerned about districts, who have negative opinions about districts, or who are kind of on the fence and just not sure. So I have a few bullet points here to help understand what happens if these two neighborhoods or one of them gets designated. And a really important point is that we don't freeze a neighborhood in time. You're not little museums where every house is precious and nothing can ever change there. We recognize that buildings change over time, your needs change, and this is going to happen in a district. So we're not stopping development, we're not stopping change, but what we're doing is managing change. We're making sure that when you want to come to us and say, I want to add to the back of my house, I want to put a different roof on my house, I want to change some windows, I want to do whatever work that is important for you, we want to make sure that that work maintains the character of your house and then the overall character of the neighborhood. So that's what this idea of managed change is. The aspects that are important to remember in a district are that we're only looking at the parts of your property that we can see from the street. So when we stand on the sidewalk in front of your house, generally we see the front facade, we see all the windows on the front, we see the front door, we see the walkway leading up from the sidewalk, we see the driveway, we see any walls, anything like that. We also, in almost all cases, we see some of the sides of your house. So those parts of the house are considered part of the review that we do for historic districts. Once we get to the back of your house, to the areas that we can't see at all, we don't do historic review. So, and this is, districts are kind of scary for people, but I hope everyone understands that in Glendale, we're different from other cities because we do citywide design review. We look at the change outs of windows and doors and new facades and new roofs on every single property in the city. So in some places around the country, someone's going to say, well, I don't want to be a district because you're going to hold up a new hoop for me to jump through. In Glendale, we already do design review. You're already subject to it. What we do is we transfer it, and I'll talk a little more in detail about that in a minute. The other important thing to remember, going down to the fourth bullet point, is that we don't review anything that happens at the interior. You still have to pull permits, you still have to deal with building and safety, and one of my planning colleagues will look at the proposal just to make sure that your interior work doesn't involve something that might affect the exterior. But there's no delay, there's no holdup on getting permits for interior work. When we review the work that you come to us with, we're going to be using a set of guidelines called the Historic District Design Guidelines that were prepared back in 2007. So we've been using them for many years now, and they're very effective, and they help guide the change. They help us do the managed change that I mentioned. Other parts of the city use the comprehensive design guidelines. So, for example, the single family design guidelines apply to most of the single family neighborhoods in the city. And then there's different levels of review. Some review we can do quickly. We can do what's called an over the counter permit, where you can come in and out. And that's when work is easily approved, meets our district guidelines, and isn't too large to kind of pass over certain thresholds that we have. But some work does need to be reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission. At no point is the design review board involved in historic districts at this time, or they used to be, but no longer. So instead of having the design review board as the higher level of review authority in a district, we have the Historic Preservation Commission, who are the commissioners who are very versed and experienced in Glendale's historic neighborhoods, what the houses are like, and what the overall character is like. So then just a few more points on what happens after a district is designated. Some people are afraid that we're going to come to them and say, well, you've got to, do some work on your property. And we do not require you to do any work unless there was a significant issue of a house that was just in such dilapidated condition that our neighborhood services team might issue a citation. But that's the same as would happen for any house around the city. Nothing specific to historic districts. We also don't regulate or review or issue permits for what we call routine repairs, maintenance. Your kid breaks a window, you put new glass in, we don't review that. Kid breaks a window and you want to replace the whole window, we do need to look at that. So there are differences. So routine repairs and maintenance are, patching stucco, fixing cracks, fixing a little bit of deteriorated wood, patching a hole in the roof, could be maintenance, where replacing a whole roof is definitely not just routine maintenance. And so we'll be looking at that. Another thing we want you guys to understand is that there's no difference in the fee structure. When you apply for a permit in Glendale, there's a certain fee attached to certain types of work, and it's going to vary from project to project, but it's going to be the same for your house as it would be for someone outside of a historic district doing the same kind of work. So there's no additional fees or extra charges. I mentioned that it's an overlay zone. Most of you are in either an R1 single family zone, which means the terrain around you is a little flatter, even if it's got a little slope. And some of you are in an R1R zone, which means you're kind of in a more steeply pitched hillside neighborhood, part of the neighborhood. And that stays the same. So all of the things that are associated with zone, the R1 or R1R, are not changed. That's why it's called an overlay. It's like the historic district is on top of the zoning. So that stays the same. And then I wanted to make the point that we have a new program that's debuting this year where contributors, and this may not mean anything to you right now, so keep in your head the word contributor. What is that if you don't know? But City Council has authorized that contributing properties in Glendale historic districts could qualify for the Mills Act property tax reduction, which some of you have heard about. If you haven't heard about that, we're not going to be talking about it specifically tonight. If you have questions, I'm going to be happy to answer it, and we may take it into the future if it's a more complicated question. But I wanted to let you know about that. Just so you get a sense of context of what we've done over the years with historic districts. As of today, we have 7 designated historic districts. A lot of them are kind of ringing the foothills of the Verdugo Mountains. And both of the neighborhoods that we're looking at today are kind of, again, up against the foothills. And then we have Cottage Grove, which is down in the foot of Adams Hill. So far, we don't have historic districts in kind of the middle part of the city or up in North Glendale, but we do from the Woodlands to Northwest Glendale and then into Adams Hill neighborhood. For context, I'm not going to read this whole chart to you, and you probably won't be able to absorb it in the time we're talking. I should mention that this whole presentation will be available on YouTube when we're done, and I'm going to give you that address on a slide, and you also have it on the on the mailing that went out to you. But just for context, many of you are probably familiar with the Rosmoyne neighborhood. That's our largest historic district, 504 properties. And then Cottage Grove, which is the little neighborhood at the foot of Adams Hill, only has 14 houses. So historic district doesn't have any size requirements. It can be, a few properties, it can be a lot of properties. Both of the districts we're talking about tonight are over 100, so we're moving into kind of some larger districts than a lot of the ones that have been designated. And then you'll see this column about contributors. And I mentioned that 60% of the buildings need to contribute to the character of the property to meet the definition and to ultimately be eligible to be designated as a historic district. And you can see that we've had, from 93% down to 73%, but always over the 60% threshold. And the other thing to note for a historic district is there's this thing called the period of significance. And Andrew will be talking about this a little more, but every district has a starting date and an ending date. And those basically reflect the era of when that neighborhood was kind of just starting to the period when it was pretty much finished, which doesn't mean that every lot was built on or that there weren't things that came in later. But you can see we have a pretty wide range, most things starting in the 1900s to the 1920s, and then ranging in most of the dates end in the 50s. But Cottage Grove has a very short period of significance. So that's going to be different from neighborhood to neighborhood, depending on its development history. So tonight, we're talking about South Cumberland Heights, the red circle on the left, and then Casa Verdugo, the red circle in the center. I wanted you to also know that there's a new district that's being proposed called Bellhurst, which is right in between. And it's on the left side, it's got Casa Verdugo, and on the right side, it's got Rosmoyne. So we'll have a long contiguous strip of historic districts in that area if these all get designated. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the geography of Glendale's districts. And then in terms of the numbers, South Cumberland Heights has 217 houses proposed. Casa Verdugo has 112 proposed. That's what we're focusing on. And then Bellhurst, just for background, has 306. In terms of the process, I've highlighted over on the right where we are. So it looks like we're in the middle of the process. We're actually a little closer to the end than you would think looking at this. Everything that's in blue represents an opportunity for the public to be involved, to comment, to sign petitions, to kind of be aware of the process and as educated as possible before City Council makes its final decision. So we're doing this public meeting review of survey tonight. April 15th, we're going to the Historic Preservation Commission. If the commission reviews the two surveys and says, yes, these surveys look good, it looks like they're complete, it looks like ARG did a good job, they're then going to authorize that the proponents of the districts circulate petitions. And petitions are pretty weird this year because this used to be something where literally people were going door to door with petitions in their hand, talking to their neighbors, asking if they want to sign, asking if they think we should have a historic district or not. But we're doing this, virtually this year. So the Bellhurst group has already done a virtual petition, which was very successful in terms of the number of people they reached and the number of people who responded. So we're going to be learning from them, and the proponents of Casa Verdugo and South Cumberland Heights will be working to kind of establish the petition process, and we'll be helping them. And the people from Bellhurst, I believe, will be advising just in terms of how they did it. And I forgot to mention before, but it's important that historic districts are a grassroots effort. It's a process, it's a thing that comes from the people, from the neighborhoods. We don't go around and survey the city and say, you are going to be a district, which is what happens in some cities. But we wait till people have come to us and say, we think our neighborhood's beautiful, we want to have a district. And that takes us back to the top of this list, where the people who are the proponents of the district file an application. And I'm not going to go into all the other details because what matters more is how we move forward. But if HPC does approve the surveys, then the petitions will be distributed. If we get enough signatures on those petitions, then we have a few final meetings: Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Commission, and then City Council. City Council has the final say. So anyone who's concerned about the district and feels like they're not comfortable with it or don't want it, there is plenty of opportunity to bring that forward to the decision makers as this process moves forward. My hope is that all of this will happen within calendar year 2021, and we'll know sometime by the end of the year whether we have districts or not. Here are the next steps. So I mentioned we have the HPC meeting on April 15th. I just discussed what that's going to entail in terms of looking at the surveys and approving this petition. The petition circulation will happen shortly afterwards and is due 6 months after that hearing. So October 14th is the due date. If we get it in earlier than that, I can almost guarantee that we will meet the 2021 deadline. If it takes that long or longer, maybe I'll eat my words. But for now, let's be hopeful. Ultimately, HPC reviews the petition, Planning Commission, and as I mentioned, City Council has the final say on this. So that's the end of my presentation. I want to make sure that you all have my personal work information. So, because I don't know that we're going to be able to answer all the questions tonight. And I also think you might be sharing this with people who couldn't attend tonight, but may look at the YouTube presentation because this will be archived on YouTube. So if you're interested, jot down my email address, jplatt@glendaleca.gov. My phone number is 818-937-8155. And I'm not going to read this YouTube address because it's so wonky with the capitals and little letters, but I'll leave it up for a second. And this is how you can find this again. And it'll be archived, I think, fairly quickly after tonight's meeting, so you'll be able to have a look at it. So unfortunately, we've because of the weird format tonight, let me stop sharing. Because of tonight's format, we're not going to take questions right now. And I know I just threw a lot of information at you. And hopefully, if you want to jot down any areas that you were concerned about and have questions, that would be great. And I'm going to introduce Andrew Goodrich from Architectural Resources Group right now, who's going to take you through the details of the two surveys. And as soon as he's done, then we're going to open it up for your questions. So please call in at the call-in number, which I hope is up on your screen still. Yeah, I see it there. So please do that. And Andrew.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Let's see. Are you able to see that okay on your end?
Yes, I see it. Yes.
Great. Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Goodrich. I'm with Architectural Resources Group, and our firm conducted the surveys of both districts that are being addressed tonight.
And Andrew, I'm not sure if this is my technological issue. I don't know if you can expand that to full screen.
Oh, yeah.
Then I think it'll be better for everyone.
Sure.
And I'm not sure how to do that. I don't think it's.
Let's see.
Yeah. Eric, can you just see?
Do you see just a little thumbnail or?
Yeah, I just see your whole basic.
Yeah, it's different than what I was showing, right?
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is in window. Maybe. See, I don't ever use these PDFs for presentations, so.
Let's see if we can figure this out. You know what I can do is I can reopen it in PowerPoint if that would be more helpful.
You know, one thing you might want to try is at the top right corner is a box with diagonal arrows.
Oh, then.
No, nope.
Does that help?
Yeah. If it's quick enough, I'm just concerned it's smallish for everyone. So
yeah, actually, I've got it right here. So
okay,
let's go ahead and open that.
And ladies and gentlemen, if there is an audience out there, we have not got any calls. What happens is if you call in, we put you on hold and you're queued up in the order of your calls, and they'll ask for your name, and then I'm going to open the phone line for you. And please remember that if you're calling, when you're talking on the phone, you do need to turn down the sound on whatever device you're watching the meeting on so we don't get all that crazy feedback. But right now we have no one on the call line, so.
Okay, is that looking better on your end?
No, I think you may need to unshare that and then reshare your, because it still shows the Adobe Acrobat.
Oh, let's see.
Worst case, maybe if you just drag the corner and make it as big as possible, hopefully that comes across on people's screens.
Let me try, apologies for the delay. I'm just gonna try maybe unsharing my screen and resharing my screen.
Andrew, it would not be a virtual meeting if we didn't have issues.
Let's see. What?
Someone just called in to tell us that people at home can double click the screens on their home screen to enlarge the image. So if we can't solve this, maybe that'll be plan B. So.
Okay. How about now? Is that working better at all, or is it the same?
It's the same, but now it's just a gray box instead of what we had. So.
Here, let's see.
This looks good because yeah, that's the PowerPoint, and then just go down.
Okay.
Yeah, the screen disappeared, but I'm not sure why it disappeared. Oh, good. We have our first caller on the line. And then go down to the, the little icon down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
The full screen. All right. How about now?
No, but people double click on your screens at home.
Okay. I apologize. Let's see. Okay. I guess I'll just go ahead and get started if that's okay. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Goodrich. I apologize again for the technical difficulties. I am with Architectural Resources Group. Our firm conducted the surveys of both districts being discussed tonight. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about our role in this project. I'll begin by providing a quick summary of our general approach, and then I'll take a few minutes to talk specifically about each district. So I'll go ahead and begin with the approach. For both districts, we followed the same methodology. We began by reviewing the district nomination and other background materials and conducted background research. We then prepared a historic context statement, which includes a detailed narrative discussion about the district's development history and identifies important contexts and themes that were used to evaluate its significance. From there, we went out into the field and we surveyed each property within the district boundaries. During the field survey, we documented each property with photos, and we also took notes about its architectural features and major alterations that are visible from the public right-of-way. Based on what we observed in the field, we evaluated the eligibility of the district as a whole and also determined whether each property within the district was a contributor or a non-contributor. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And finally, we compiled all of our work into a draft survey report with DPR forms for each property, as well as the entire district appended to the report. And a separate report was prepared for each district. So I thought it was important to talk a little bit more about how we distinguish between what we call contributing and non-contributing properties. Contributing properties were built during the period of significance for the district. They contribute to the district's historic and architectural character, and they have generally withstood relatively few major alterations. So contributing properties appear today much as they did when they were originally built. Non-contributing properties were either built outside the period of significance, so this generally applied to newly constructed houses within the district boundaries, as well as properties that have been extensively altered. Typically, houses were considered to be non-contributors if they have significant additions. These are things like large additions, porch enclosures, alteration of window openings, and or other significant changes that are not easily reversible and have really kind of changed the original appearance and character of the building. Each property was assigned what's called a status code. This is basically, it's just an alphanumeric code that's used to convey the findings of a survey. These are included on the DPR forms for each property within each district. So if a property has a status code of either 5D3 or 5B, that means it's a contributor. If it has a status code of 7D and C, that means it's a non-contributor. In a couple of very isolated instances, we used a status code called 7R. This just meant that a property was not evaluated, typically because it was not visible from the street, so we weren't able to complete an evaluation. So next I wanted to talk specifically about each district, and I'll begin with Casa Verdugo. Casa Verdugo is located just north of downtown Glendale and the 134 freeway. Generally, it includes the area between Mountain Street, Stocker Street, and Maryland Avenue, and then cuts mid-block between Campbell and Jackson Streets on the east. The southern boundary, as you can see in the map, hopefully you can see in the map, is a bit irregular. It's drawn this way deliberately to exclude incompatible infill development along Stocker Street. In total, there are 112 properties within the proposed Casa Verdugo district. So the neighborhood developed in tandem with the expansion of a streetcar line around the turn of the 20th century. At this time, the streetcar line that traveled down Brand Boulevard was extended north up to the base of the Verdugo Mountains at the intersection of Brand and Mountain. To attract ridership, the Pacific Electric Railway, which operated the streetcar, opened a restaurant near the end of the line in 1904 and called it Casa Verdugo. The restaurant was located in an old adobe structure, which is no longer there, and it was a themed environment that served what was then called California Spanish cuisine and would now probably be called Mexican food. The restaurant was a huge success. People from all over would take day trips on the streetcar up through Glendale to eat at the Casa Verdugo restaurant. And its success is really attributed to the woman who ran it. Her name was Piedad Yorba Sowell, and she was a very charismatic figure and a very savvy businesswoman. The restaurant operated out of the old adobe for several years. However, after a dispute between Sowell and the Pacific Electric Company, she trademarked the Casa Verdugo name and reopened the restaurant in her personal house, which sat about a block to the east at 1235 North Louise Street. The restaurant, the Casa Verdugo restaurant, operated here until the early 1920s. So that house is actually still there. It was designated a Glendale landmark in 2017. It's listed in the Glendale Register, and it was also identified in the survey as a district contributor. So the neighborhood developed in tandem with the So in the first several decades of the 20th century, the areas adjacent to the Casa Verdugo restaurant and the streetcar line were subdivided into residential parcels. This map on the left shows the various tracts of land that were subdivided during this time in the area immediately adjacent to the restaurant. Development began in earnest in the 19-teens. One by one, parcels were purchased and developed with single-family suburban houses, a trend that continued over the next several decades. The development of this area resulted in the neighborhood that is now known as Casa Verdugo. There are many different architectural styles represented within the district. Casa Verdugo is notable in that it has a considerable number of craftsman-style houses when compared to many other Glendale neighborhoods. The craftsman style was popular in the early decades of the 20th century, and it really emphasized building forms and materials that took cues from nature. Pictured here are just a few of the many craftsman houses in the district. You can see that they range really from modest bungalows to higher style dwellings and everything in between. There are also a considerable number of period revival style houses in the neighborhood. Most common are the Spanish colonial revival, American colonial revival, Mediterranean revival, and Tudor revival styles, all of which were popular during the 1920s and 30s and can be found in many of Glendale's established neighborhoods. By the Depression era, the neighborhood was pretty well established, and new development tended to consist primarily of infill development. Houses that were built during the Depression era and very early post-war years were typically designed in the minimal traditional ranch and modern styles, which are pictured here on the screen. All in all, there's a pretty broad range of architectural styles represented in the district, but these styles are all very compatible with one another, and collectively they provide the district with its distinctive visual character. So to be eligible as a historic district in the city of Glendale, a district must meet a couple of benchmarks. First, it must meet at least one of the city's 9 criteria for designating districts. In our opinion, based on our field observations and our research, Casa Verdugo appears to meet 4 of these criteria. Specifically, it appears to meet criteria A, B, G, and H. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the period of significance, which Jay touched on earlier. So we're recommending that the period of significance begin in 1906. This is when Piedad Urbisal's house was built. It's the oldest one in the neighborhood, I believe. And we propose that it ends in 1957, which is when the last contributing property was constructed. A district must also have at least 60% contributing properties in order to be eligible for listing. Of the 112 properties in the Casa Verdugo district, 75 are contributors, 35 are non-contributors, and 2 were not evaluated. 1 was not visible, the other was under construction at the time of the survey. This amounts to a contributor count of 67%, which exceeds the city's 60% requirement. So in summary, we are recommending that Casa Verdugo is eligible as a Glendale Historic District. And now I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about the second district, South Cumberland Heights. So this district is located a little bit to the north and the west of Casa Verdugo. It's not too far from the Brand Library. As shown on the map, its boundaries are irregular, which I'll talk about more in a minute, but they generally encompass the area between Cumberland Road, Kenneth Road, Grandview Road, and Highland Avenue. Within this area, there are 217 properties. So South Cumberland Heights is actually part of a larger area called Cumberland Heights. Cumberland Heights was surveyed in its entirety back in 2004, but was not designated. However, since then, pieces of the original Cumberland Heights district have been broken off and designated as shown on this map. Ard Even Highlands, which is shown in blue, was designated in 2009, and North Cumberland Heights, which is shown in yellow, was designated in 2012. South Cumberland Heights, which is what we're looking at, and it's represented in a light green on the map if you can see it, accounts for the remainder of the original Cumberland Heights district that has not yet been designated. South Cumberland Heights historically consisted of a patchwork of various subdivisions. These subdivisions were developed by different parties. However, they all developed at the same general time and in the same general manner with the same types and styles of houses, so overall the area is very visually cohesive. Development began in earnest during the 1920s and continued for the next couple of decades, which resulted in the present-day neighborhood. Even though it's being evaluated on its own merits, this area developed at the same time as the rest of the larger Cumberland Heights area. So many of the same characteristics that can be found in Ard Even Highlands and North Cumberland Heights are also present in South Cumberland Heights. This includes things like architectural styles, building size and setback, trees, and streetscape features. So architecturally, this district is defined primarily by period revival style houses. Some of the most common styles are shown on the screen. These include Spanish colonial revival, Tudor revival, American colonial revival, and French-inspired styles, all of which were popular in Glendale in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. There are also a considerable number of minimal traditional and ranch-style houses in the district. These styles were most often applied to houses that were constructed during the Depression era and into the early post-war period. So as we did for Casa Verdugo, we evaluated South Cumberland Heights against the city of Glendale's designation criteria for districts. And in our opinion, this district appears to meet 5 of the 9 criteria. Specifically, it appears to meet criteria A, B, C, G, and H. As far as period of significance goes, we're recommending that the period of significance begin in 1922, which is when the first contributing houses were constructed. And then we're recommending that it end in 1960, by which point the neighborhood was pretty much entirely built out. Of the 217 properties in South Cumberland Heights, 161 are contributors, 55 are non-contributors, and 1 was not evaluated because it was not visible. This makes for a total contributor count of 74%, which far exceeds the city's 60% threshold. So in conclusion, we are recommending that South Cumberland Heights is eligible as a Glendale Historic District. That actually concludes my portion of the presentation. Again, thank you for bearing with me and my technical issues. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Jay. And I will be on the line, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. And if you stop sharing, and we've got a couple of calls waiting for us. So I want to encourage everyone, this is the time to call in. If you're not able to or don't have enough information, please let me know, and I can try to help you during the time, hopefully before the Historic Preservation Commission meeting on April 15th. And let's get, I'm not sure. Andrew, down at the bottom of the screen, is there a share or a stop sharing?
Let's see.
Your screen may be different than mine.
Yeah, not. Let me see if I can. There's a little thing at the top. How about now?
That just gives us your email. So you're still sharing. So
stop sharing. Let's try that.
Yeah, stop sharing is the way to go.
There we go.
All right, cool. So we have only one call now. Someone looks like they may have gotten disconnected, but is trying to call back. I'm hopeful that we have more than 2 callers. If we don't, we'll have a shorter meeting than we were expecting, but we'll probably hang out for a few minutes in case anyone's joining late. So now's my chance to try to be technologically challenged and see if I can answer this. Okay, Lori Hartwell, are you there? Lori Hartwell? Lori, are you there? See, here we go. I predicted it. And let's see, I see a red. Lori, are you there? Okay, I'm going to put Lori back on hold and see if it's a problem on her end. And I'm going to try to talk to Colin now. Colin, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. So the system works, and hopefully Lori it looks like Lori is trying to call back. So Colin, how can we help with questions or hear what your thoughts are?
Well, I guess the question that is of most significance to us is, so does it mean that if the survey was completed in June and the property is deemed contributing and has high integrity, it means that the property at the time of the survey was deemed to have not diminished the overall historic character of the building and the neighborhood?
Correct.
Thank you. That's a very important question.
Colin, let me just, if your question, there's always a fear in historic districts that there is a lag time from the survey to designation. And we have very strong laws and rules in Glendale about illegal work that happens to properties. And I just want to, and I'm not suggesting that this is where the basis for your question was coming from, but I just want everyone who's listening to know that if the property was surveyed and was seen as a contributor at that time, it's based on the fact that there were certain features intact at the property when that was taken. We're going to assume that those are going to remain intact. And if you do need to make changes during the interim, you should contact the planning division. You can call me directly or talk to any of my colleagues in planning to talk about what you're thinking of doing, what kind of permits you might require, that sort of thing. So, but you're correct that we don't go back and take new pictures at the end of this process.
Yes, understood. Thank you. Appreciate cool. The answer.
Great. All right, let's see where we go. All right, and now we have Elizabeth calling. Elizabeth, are you there?
I am.
At the end of this process. Yes, understood.
Hello, Elizabeth. Please turn down your sound.
All right, let's see where we go.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Yes, we all can hear you now, so just make sure the sound is down on your TV or whatever you're looking at, and let us know what you're thinking.
I'm looking at you, actually, yeah.
All right.
Okay,
good.
Jay.
So go ahead.
It may just be a formality, but as the architect himself who did the survey was there, I just wanted to point out that in the survey sheet on our particular home, 305 East Randolph, there is a correction, as this goes to the Historic Commission, that I would like to make. It says window 1 vinyl, and I already wrote to you to say that there is not one vinyl window or door in this house, so that's a mistake. And it states that the front door was replaced, which we have reason to believe never happened. I don't know if the integrity code for every house weighs in as well. If it does, then this might affect our integrity level as stated on the survey.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for sending me the letter. And I've already talked with Andrew about this one. And just before I speak directly to this, I'll speak directly to it now. We're going to make those changes because I know your house well, because Elizabeth's house was recently put on the Glendale Register. So I've been there a couple of times and we've looked at pictures a lot. And I agree, there are no vinyl windows. And I do believe the front door is original to the house. And just so everyone understands that surveys by the best, and ARG is the best. Andrew is great, his colleagues are great. But when you're doing a historic district survey, it's done fairly quickly. You're not investigating the house. You're not, in fact, setting foot on the property. We don't ask for permission to access your houses. It's all done from the street. And sometimes you see something from a distance and you think it's one thing and it might be another. And that's one of the reasons why we have these meetings. We often will get corrections like this, and there's no offense taken. We get it, and things like that happen.
No offense meant. No offense meant. I have no idea what factors play in the ultimate decision, but as we got an integrity code, I thought I would like this corrected.
Yeah, we're definitely going to make corrections on your form, and your integrity level for your house will be high rather than moderate based on making those changes. Okay, well, thank you, Elizabeth. Is that it?
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, now we have Lori Hartwell, who was trying to call before. And Lori, you're on the air, I hope.
Yeah, I have a question. I haven't been able to hear the last, 7 minutes. So I don't know if this was answered, but I'm from Casa Verdugo, and when we do go through to get more signatures to go back around, do you have any guidelines for us during a COVID crisis? Because, it's a little, is there guidelines that you could help us with as residents?
Yes, of course. We everything is crazy, right? And this meeting itself is so different from how we usually do these things. And we're very lucky that your neighbors over in Bellhurst, so your neighbors just to the east, they're at the beginning stage of the historic district, but they just did their first petition. And they did an amazing job mobilizing both the core team of the proponents for the district. We worked with our city attorney's office to figure out how to do digital signatures that are legal so that we could say that these signatures are binding on the petitions. And what we're going to do is work with the proponents of Casa Verdugo and also the people in South Cumberland Heights. And the people from Bellhurst have suggested that they're going to be helpful in kind of sharing their wisdom of how they develop that process. Because normally the whole petition thing is driven by the proponents. The city hands you a group of, a bunch of blank petitions, but we don't participate in gathering signatures because the city wants to remain neutral. We stay in the middle of this. You want to sign the petition, great. You don't want to sign, great. If you oppose the district, we'll talk to you about that also. So yeah, we're definitely going to be working with everyone to make sure that you can do this.
So we would use their own electronic devices and go around. Is that how it would work?
Yeah. It's not even necessarily going around. They did a great job. They sent mailings out to their neighbors, and I'm not going to be able to tell you have to do it one way or another. You, as proponents, you and your neighbors are going to figure out what the best way for you is. But they had a system that worked like a machine, I think, and they got a lot of signatures within the allotted time, which I thought was going to be hard given the whole shutdown. So, but we're going to help you. And if you're not in touch with the people who are the proponents of your district, just send me an email. Let me know you want to be interested in helping with the petition gathering, and I'll share your information with the proponents. Because I don't think you're one. I don't recognize. I do sort of recognize your name, but I don't remember it being from the district designation. So, but anyways, yeah, we'll definitely be doing this safe, and hopefully you guys will be able to do it very efficiently also.
Yeah, I'm hooked in with Robin Bay. I do get her emails.
Okay, cool. So just stay in touch, and if you need me, let me know. And hopefully once the petition won't be distributed until after the Historic Preservation Commission meetings. We have to wait till April 15th. And if they give the go-ahead, that's when everyone can start gathering signatures.
Okay, thank you.
All right, cool. Thank you. Okay, I have Sean Bursell, and Sean, you are on the air.
Hi, Jay. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is Sean Bursell, and by the way, Lori Hartwell is a proud resident of Casa Verdugo and a great proponent of the historic district. I can't see you, Lori, but hi, and hi to all my friends in Casa Verdugo. Jay, I have two questions for you. So the first one has to do with unevaluated properties. There were two unevaluated properties in Casa Verdugo. One could not be reached. It's on a flag lot. It's a very cute house. It's too bad you couldn't reach it. And it's very old. And the other is a house that's currently under renovation. So what, from a planning purpose, not for planning purposes, not for historic district designation purposes, when something is unevaluated in a historic district, how is it treated going forward? Would it be treated as a non-contributor, or will you go back in the future and try to do an evaluation? What happens with that?
Yeah, so I have two different answers for you for the two different situations you're describing. So I'll start with the house on Lorraine. That house actually went to the Historic Preservation Commission quite a while ago and is still kind of just finishing up their construction. The goal was for that house to remain a contributor after they did the work, and there have been a few setbacks and corrections made over time. But the last time I saw photos of it, I think we're still moving in that direction. So what we're going to do on that one, since we expect the construction to be done before the district is designated, is to ask ARG to review that once we can say this is the finished product, and make sure that it appears to be a contributor, and hopefully that's the case. But if not, ARG will let us know that they don't agree with that. So that one will be
Great.
definitely finalized before the report is final. Or well, not necessarily before the report is final, but we'll work on it, and we can change DPR forms after the fact as things change on the ground. So we'll make sure we know the answer to that one. In terms of properties that we can't see, it's kind of hard to assess those. It's hard to even say what style they are. And I was going to talk to Andrew about that, because we have another flag lot property in South Cumberland Heights that, from the aerial views that you see on Google, is very clearly not a contributor. Very clearly, we can do some permit research and figure out what year it was built. But for a house, like you said, that's kind of a nice, cute house that you think is probably of the period of original, within the period of significance, it's a little hard to assess whether it's a contributor or not. So I'll talk to Andrew about what their precedent is. ARG's done tons of historic district surveys around the state and probably in other states. So we'll just kind of get the wisdom of their experience. It hasn't really come up that much. Worst case, someone comes to us with a proposal for work at the house. We're going to ask for photographs. We may have to do a site visit. And again, we would assess the property. And the code revisions that we made in 2019 allows us to identify character-defining features and even styles of properties after the fact, after a survey is done, because we recognize that sometimes we're not going to know everything at the time the survey occurs. So does that answer both of those?
That answers the question about unevaluated properties. My other question is really for the consultant from ARG, and recently the city of Glendale acknowledged it has to do a better job of acknowledging the racial and ethnic history of the city. The applicants for Casa Verdugo submitted several pages of detailed information about the early African-American, Hispanic, Asian, and Armenian residents of the greater Casa Verdugo area and thus Glendale. None of this history was acknowledged in the survey, and I'm wondering why not.
I would have to go back through the district materials to give you a specific answer as to why not. But I appreciate you bringing that up, and we can certainly review those materials, and we can certainly incorporate information into the report.
Yeah, and we're definitely, from the city level, we're going to work and encourage ARG to make sure that that happens, because we're looking at our districts as important components of the city's effort to address the racist past of Glendale, and the work that the Library Arts and Culture Commission is doing to that, and the context that they're going to be developing. So we want to make sure that we're working in tandem with them to provide them with the information we have. I was also interested to look at their website from the Reflect space. I can't remember exactly what the website's called. I've always wondered, and for people who don't know what we're talking about, a lot of the neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that you live in and many other neighborhoods in Glendale used to have things called restrictive covenants that were created by the developer, the subdividers of the neighborhoods, and would be covenants that would not allow African Americans, non-Caucasians, in some cases Jewish people, would not allow those people to buy property or to live in these neighborhoods. And as part of Glendale's acknowledgement of the badnesses of the past, we want to make sure that the neighborhoods that we talk about don't ignore this. And most of our recent reports for historic districts have at least what information we have and kind of an overall acknowledgement that this was happening. What I was excited to find on the library's website, I had never seen an actual covenant from that era. I'd never seen what these actually look like. So I guess some of the research that people are doing is digging these things up, which is great, so that we have a tangible artifact to kind of look at and say, wow, thank God we're moving forward. But everything that you submitted, Sean, I can't say that every word that you submitted will make it into the report, but we'll definitely make sure that it's covered. So.
I appreciate that, because as you know, some of the earliest African-American residents of Glendale lived in greater Casa Verdugo, and as far as we know, the earliest Armenian-American residents of Glendale lived in the greater Casa Verdugo area. So there's an important story to be told there. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And then just on a much less important note, but following up on a message that you had sent me, we are going to revise the photos that were unfortunately taken of some of the properties on trash day. So we'll get rid of those photos and put nice shiny pictures in, so the survey won't have that aspect.
We greatly appreciate that, Jay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Okay, we have Ida calling. Ida, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Great. How can we help you?
So my question is the following: what happens when the district passes as historic and the property is not a contributor? Those properties down the line, and if you want to do any kind of renovation to the facade of the house, or a complete renovation, what happens then? Does it still have to go with the historical?
Yeah, like with any project, there's a range of possible outcomes in terms of what kind of review you go through. A smaller project may be easily approved, and a larger project may have to go to the Historic Preservation Commission. But the Historic District Design Guidelines have a section specifically geared toward the non-contributing properties. And as you can imagine, since we're saying that those don't have the historic character and the features that we have on the contributing houses, you have a little more lenience in terms of what you can do to one of those properties. In fact, you can even tear down a non-contributor and propose building a new house, which is harder to do. It's not going to be easy to tear down a contributor. There's a process, and if that ever comes up, we're going to walk people through the process. But kind of one of the goals of historic districts is to keep our contributors, to not lose them, and to keep the district more or less intact, even though we talk about, yes, there will be change and we're going to manage the change. So depending, if you were talking about remodeling a non-contributor and giving it a different style than it has currently, that's a possibility. We'd probably bring something like that to the Preservation Commission. If you were talking about putting a one-story addition on the back side of the house, we would probably just be able to approve that at staff level. We can also do that for contributors. If you can't see it from the street, we can approve many things for either type of property. Does that answer your question, or do you have something more specific?
No, I think that I know if my specific property is a contributor or a non-contributor. Where can I go to see the results of that survey?
Yeah, if you, I don't know if you saw the beginning of the presentation or if you have the mailing that I sent out.
I do, yes.
You can go to the city website, so you can scan that QR code or go to, let me actually get the piece of paper so I don't misguide you. You can go to glendaleca.gov/planning meetings notices. And then you'll see, and if you're in Casa Verdugo, you just click on Casa Verdugo, and then you'll be able to read the entire historic report that Andrew was just talking about.
Right, I read that.
And then you can also find the survey form for your house, and they're organized by street. So you just click on your street, and then all of the forms on your street will be there, and you just have to scroll down. Now, if you want to tell me what district you're in again and your address, since we don't have too many callers.
I'm in Casa Verdugo, and my address is 416 East Randolph.
Okay, let me get that for you. 416.
416.
You are a non-contributor.
Okay. Okay.
No, and there's no problem being a non-contributor, but it just means that your house, which looks like it's a Spanish-style house, was altered at some point in the past, so it kind of lost too many of the features that give it that kind of Spanish character.
Got it.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your help.
Sure thing. Thank you. Okay. Next caller is Mike. Are you there, Mike?
Yes, I am here.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, sir. Hello, Mr. J. I could not believe that there is a chance to talk with you because our address is 409 East Randolph Street. And more than 1 year ago, we applied through our architect. It's, I don't know his name. You should know. It's NRK Architect Bureau or Office. I don't know. So
yeah,
for ADU construction instead of garage that is behind of our house, far behind the house. There is a big progress. Thank you very much. It's a big progress because the guy who gave us first plan, it was very ugly. Plan that it's just behind the house, and it's covering all this view. And when you're coming out or looking from the window, it's like you are in a jail with the wall, jail wall of maybe 30 meter. I using meter, 30 meter high. So I complain about that plan and big progress because the question was that garage should be stay over there. That is almost doesn't. You can see from the driveway from the streets. It's 1/10 maybe all these faces you can see if you're standing and very careful looking to find the garage. So big progress is that we I mean, you agreed to destroy that garage, take off. And to be honest, I am a little bit sorry for my accent, and my feelings are a little bit. I'm sorry again?
Oh, no, we can understand you. Don't worry. Everything's cool.
Yeah, okay. So I told this guy, I said, listen, this garage is old and old, and it's so old that you're afraid to go inside. Anyway, somebody should destroy it because it's too old, and what is that? Eaten by this termite or everything. And by architectural meaning and feeling or value, it doesn't mean anything. It just box of the rotten wood. So you know that you gave your agree to destroy it, but now the question is, it's somehow 1/10 of that whole this garage you can see from the street. I told the guy, hey, if it's too historical, that garage, I understand home is a historical. I value the history of the country. I value history of any country, traditions, especially America, why I am here. There is a big difference between architectural history and mental history of nation. It's different question. So I say if it's too historical, that garage, old garage, broken garage, why they visit the birthplace of the Jefferson, President Jefferson, or Franklin Roosevelt, or what is it, Adams, or Washington? He's smiling on me. So what do you think? If this question, this problem will be solved, Mr. J, or not? Because we paid the money and we want to get this ADU because I have grandchildren, I have children, and I have built something because I am constructor former in my country. There is a lot of problems in Glendale, like in a whole country, a lot of problems. If the biggest problem is this, I'm sorry again?
Oh, no, I was just stepping. I understand what you're saying, so.
You understand, yeah. Please, just come to conclusion. We can move further or not, because to be honest, now I'm thinking, well, why we start all this stuff? I'm not 16 years old. I am old, but something stay inside of me, some kind of, get good things done, like in an old movie say. Hope never dies.
We getting good stuff done is important. I'm somewhat familiar with your case, and I don't think it's appropriate to talk about specifics with everyone watching and on the line. Not that we're hiding anything, but it's just not as germane. But we can definitely talk, and I think I know who your case planner is, so I'll try to talk to them tomorrow to see the status. We work on so many issues that it's hard to keep them up here.
Yeah. Thank
constantly.
You. Thank you.
But you do raise an issue that I think is of interest to the broader community, which is the accessory dwelling units, or the ADUs, that are kind of a big thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure most of you have heard about that. And like Mike is saying, we can approve ADUs when they're not visible in a historic district. And there are two ways to do that. One is to put it on a part of the lot where truly it's not visible. It's behind the house, tucked in the corner, perhaps, and we're not going to see it. But we also allow in historic districts for existing garages to be converted into ADUs. But we make sure through our design review process that when you look at that from the street, it's still going to look like a garage. And it's still going to have a big opening that looks like a garage door, even if it's a wall rather than a movable door. And so that's something that anyone who's curious about, can I do an ADU in a historic district? Yes, for the most part, but there may be some situations, for example, corner lots, where you can see so much of the side of the house and the back of the house. Sometimes it's a little harder on a corner lot. So I just want to be realistic about that. But Mike, in terms of your specific questions, we'll talk about, because I don't remember that we had enough information to approve demolishing the garage. But if we did that and had that information, I'm going to check and make sure everything's cool. And hopefully we'll talk either tomorrow or toward the end of the week, or on Friday, I guess. And I'll talk to the planner and figure that out. So is that okay? Is that answer?
Yeah, there is some hope that something will be good happen, as in an old movie say, great movie, hope never die. It's, just hope, and maybe one day it will be okay. Okay, thank you very much. I think you remember that house, and you remember by our architect the problem that is still not solved, right? Yeah, you remember.
Yeah, well, we'll try to help you work on it. And another point, I'm going to hang up with you now if you don't have anything else, but I'll make another point. Is that cool? You're good, Mike?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Another thing that everyone needs to know about, which kind of goes back to what our first caller sort of was asking about a little bit, I think. Because this district is a pending historic district, the city's, the municipal code allows the planning division to treat this like it is a district. The idea being we don't want to start losing features or having changes made that people are just trying to get out from under the wire and not have a contributor, for example. Most people understand that having a contributor is a good thing. It means your house is beautiful. It means it's part of the characteristic part of the neighborhood. And it also means that you may possibly be eligible for the Mills Act property tax reduction. Only a few Mills Act contracts will go to contributors each year, and it's going to be for properties that require a decent amount of work, not just a little cosmetic here or there. And it's also not going to cover work that you did 5 years ago or even last year. It's going to cover work that you need to do in the future. So I just want to remind people, we're still regulating as if these are historic district properties. If, for example, the district doesn't end up getting designated, council, for whatever reason, votes against designation, which hasn't happened yet, so I'm not worried that that will happen. But if it were to happen, that would change, and then the design review board would resume its authority the way it has over properties in the rest of the city that aren't historic neighborhoods or Glendale Register properties. All right, so I have Shauna on the line. So let's go to Shauna. Are you there?
Yes.
Thank you. And your question, how can we help you?
Oh, am I able to ask Jay, or I need to ask you?
Yes, you're asking me, but you're also being heard by anyone who's calling in on this, and Andrew's also with us to help answer questions.
Okay, well, I'm also listening to the meeting.
Yeah, turn down the sound that you're listening to, because it's going to be really confusing. There's a time delay. So turn down your sound and then just talk on the phone.
Is this Jay?
Yes, this is Jay.
Oh, sorry, Jay. I'm so confused. I thought I was watching you live.
Well, you are, and you're talking to me live, but there's a delay, so.
Got it. Okay. I know that this is probably not the best forum to talk about Mills Act, but you did mention it very briefly at the beginning of your presentation, and I missed what you said. I missed if you said that if you're a contributor that you may qualify to be a for the Mills Act.
While we were kind of trying to connect, I kind of just went over it again, but I'm happy to share it a third time, because you can never say something too often, because no one can remember everything. The City Council directed us to offer Mills Act contracts to some contributors under certain circumstances. So it's going to be a competitive process where you're going to file an application, which should be ready hopefully next month. And you will kind of tell us information about the property, give us the basic background information, and then you're going to give us a work plan. You're going to tell us, what problems does your house have? What kind of needs does it have? And you're going to try to get estimates from the roofer, from the structural engineer, from whoever needs to do the work. You're going to give us an estimated cost for that work. And then we're going to look at the work and kind of rank the different applications, because we're only going to give 2 or maybe a couple more per year for contributors. So what we're trying to do is, instead of just giving you the Mills Act contract because you happen to be a contributor, how would we be able to distinguish between your house and 25 other houses that all are nice houses? So we want to make sure that the money that you save from the Mills Act property tax reduction is going to be helping you do some significant work. So significant work, we don't have a full definition because you may have all kinds of problems that we don't anticipate. But you can think in terms of a house that has a cracked or a damaged foundation, or structural framing is eaten away by termites or dry rot, or is failing in some way. You might have an old electrical system that's not safe anymore, and you need to put a decent amount of money in to fix the electrical system. You also might be in a house where you can be a contributor, and I think Andrew mentioned this a little bit. You can be a contributor, but you don't have to have your house in perfect historic condition. There could be changes. So, for example, your house could have some replacement windows that we see from the street. And you might say, hey, I want to put in some windows that really match the historic character of my house. So that's what we call work that kind of restores your house back to its earlier appearance. So those are the kinds of work, restoration work, and the significant kind of structural and safety work that can keep these houses alive and safe for you to live in, are the kinds of things that will score more points and put you higher on the list for the Mills Act. And that's the list that we prepare at staff level. Then we're going to bring that to the Historic Preservation Commission, and they will review it. They don't have to follow it. So they may say, well, this house has this, and this house that you ranked lower is like this, but we think it should be the other way around. So this is all new, so we don't know how it's going to work. But ultimately, Mills Act contracts also have to go to City Council for approval. So there'll be 2 steps of review in public hearings, where you have a chance to make your arguments of why you think you deserve the Mills Act. But ultimately, it's not a given that you're going to get it. And there may be some houses that apply that may not actually get a lot of points or really be the best candidates. So we're going to see how it goes. And this is something, again, if you call me or email me, I can go into more detail about your specific house and what kind of issues you might have.
That'd
Does that
great.
give you a good overview?
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, cool. That's great. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. And we have a final caller, unless anyone else calls in, so call soon. And this is Alina. Hi, Alina. Alina, are you there?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I think the delay gets everybody. Okay. So just if you can explain the door situation somebody called about at the Casa Verdugo, I think it was called district. If you're a contributor, do you then have the violation letters? Let's say if you change your door, does it have to be a certain door that you get to tell us to put on, or let's say any other material they use during construction? I mean, is it a much harder or more expensive process to go through a remodeling process when you are a contributor?
Yeah, and it is possible that the materials that you need to buy for a contributor may cost more than if you lived outside of a historic district. So I don't want to kind of pretend that that's not the case. The most obvious example is with windows, where so many people want to put in vinyl windows all over the city. Our historic district guidelines don't allow vinyl windows that we can see from the street. We do allow other types of replacement windows. We encourage you not to replace windows first, and try to work with you to see if your windows could possibly be restored. There are certain types of windows, very special windows, that we might just even say, no, we can't. We can't do that at staff level. You'll have to go to the Historic Preservation Commission. So it's going to vary. And you mentioned a front door, and that's an interesting thing, and something I should mention just in general about getting permits. There are certain things on your house that you don't need a building permit for, but in a historic district, you still need to have review and approval by the city for the design. And the front doors of houses are probably the best example of that. So, for example, if you have a front door and you want to replace it, but you're not changing the size of the opening, technically, you don't have to get a permit from the Building and Safety Division. But you do need to get permission from the Planning Division to make sure that the door you're proposing is appropriate. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the existing door, and first we're going to say, is this the original door, or does it look like an old door? Or is this some door that was installed 20 years ago and doesn't really work with the house anyways, so we don't care if it goes away? If it's an old door, we're going to see if you might be able to replace it or to fix it first, to restore it back to its original condition. And then it's all case by case. We might try, if it's a very special door, we might be hopeful that it can be replaced with a door that looks just like it. And if it's, so we have a range of options. So if we first start looking at whether it's an old door, then we look at our design guidelines for the style of your house to see what kinds of doors are appropriate. And in that case, it wouldn't necessarily cost more, depending on what you choose. But we also don't tell you. You asked, do we tell you exactly what we send? I'm sorry, we don't tell you exactly what door to put in. So we work with you. If we're okay with replacing the door, first you tell us what you want, and we work with you to see, does that fit the guidelines? Does it fit the style of the house? If it does, great. If it doesn't, we kind of work a little more to try to find the right style door for you. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, kind of limits you. Like, to me, that's for me, it's the fear that why should anybody have a say about my front door when right now they don't, and and also like windows, for example. I know obviously I wouldn't put vinyl windows, for example, on my house, but my windows are very old and they're not efficient. There's so much draft, and so it's not even electricity efficient. In the summers it gets too hot, in the winters it gets too cold, and what have you. So if I was to remodel, I would not want to be stuck with these windows, and it would be super costly to even try to get every single one of these restored. So in a case like that, what happens? Do we compromise, or am I I bought this house before it was historic, so I wouldn't want to be forced to move out of a house that I've been in all these years. If somebody does not want to, can they even opt out to be a part of this process?
Okay, the bunch of different questions. We don't have an opt-out provision. So if City Council ultimately decides to designate the district, it's designated. We understand. I personally understand. A lot of people don't like districts. A lot of people are afraid of districts. And as I just said, I'm not going to deny that sometimes the material that you need to use to replace something in a district might cost more than the cheapest possible material that you could use in another part of the city. But in terms of, I think I lost my other part of your question.
The windows.
So I understand your concern, but we do kind of have the ability to kind of say no to certain things. But in terms of windows, for example, we have allowed properties to replace specific windows, and in some cases, an entire house worth of windows. But we do make sure that those windows the new windows look very close to the old windows. And it's a balancing act in historic preservation in general, because we get that you want to have windows that are energy efficient. You'll hear from some people, well, you're not going to save as much money with the windows as you would if you just insulated your attic, so maybe you should try to keep your windows. Those arguments we can't get into. Our council, when we started this historic district process, there was a provision that we will be more open to this kind of thing than you might be in districts in other parts of the country or even other parts of California. But in terms of what material to use, our guidelines allow you to replace windows with non-wood windows. So we've approved in a number of cases We've approved what's called an aluminum clad wood window, where it's kind of wood on the inside. It's got a frame similar to a traditional window, but the outside face is covered with a thin sheet of aluminum that's colored to whatever color scheme you want to have for your house. And we can also approve fiberglass windows, which also come in different colors and have profiles that are, not exact, but close to historic windows. And the Historic District Guidelines specifically say that we can use those other materials. They do say that you cannot use vinyl where we see it from the street. And they have a little provision, like if it's down on the side of your driveway, way far down on the side of your house, maybe we can approve vinyl there. But to date, we've never done that because most people want to make a decision and use one type of material, not have a vinyl here and a wood there and that kind of thing. So, so it's a complicated issue with windows, and we know that some members of the community have very strong opinions about windows, ranging from never get rid of your windows, keep the old ones, to people who have been strong advocates for vinyl windows. Years ago, we did outreach in the community. We came up with window replacement guidelines that apply citywide. So this is an issue that's not just happening in historic districts, it's happening all over the place. But in districts, we do have actually pretty strong guidance from the historic district guidelines in terms of what we can approve and not approve. And you mentioned one thing that I just want to kind of end with. Restoring windows is generally cheaper than replacing windows. So I can't promise in every case that's going to happen. But what happens when people restore windows, for example, if you have wood windows, they're going to take the actual windows that move up and down or that open like casement windows, and they're going to take those out. They're going to sand them down. They're going to fix any damaged areas. They're going to reglaze the glass, which is the seal on the outside of the glass where you have the individual panes often. They're going to add weather stripping. They're going to caulk, and they're going to make them air and watertight. So they're going to be much better than bad windows that have been deteriorating over the years. What you're not going to get, though, is the double glass, the insulating glass that a lot of people want. But we work with you, and we understand that people want to have thermally efficient windows. So there's no rule about no. We don't say no to that. We just kind of go through these steps that I've described to see what the right solution is for your property.
And
Does that
one
help?
more thing. Yes, one more thing. And as far as I spoke with you before, and I'm glad your meeting was late and mine finished early, so I made it this. But let's say for my house, I'm sorry?
Did we talk earlier today? I think so.
Yes, we did. I was not going to make it to the meeting, but fortunately I did. So cool. For example, for my house, it's a Monterey Revival, and I know just one example, the roof. There's two types of roof that a Monterey Revival will have or can have. Now, if I were to do any restorations or any remodel, let's say, as long as you stay true to that style, can you then switch from one type to another? Or are you stuck with what the original owner of this house has put on?
Well, it depends. Like so many things are case by case, and it's kind of a non-answer. But since I know your house, since we just talked about it, there are two types of Monterey Revival houses. There's kind of a Spanish-influenced Monterey, and then there's kind of a colonial style Monterey. Yours falls into the colonial style. So if you came to us and said, I want to replace the shingles on my roof with a different color asphalt shingle, we're going to say great. Or with a different company or even a shingle that looks a little different, we're going to say that's no problem at all. If you came to us and said, I want to put a red Spanish tile roof on my house because your house isn't the Spanish tile Monterey Revival, we'd say, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that at staff level. And whenever you hear, no, you can't do it at staff level, that does mean you can always go to the Historic Preservation Commission to ask for permission there. There are some things that I would probably advise you not to do because it's just so far removed from the guidelines that it's hard to imagine the commission would approve it, but it's always an option for you. And then anytime anyone goes to the commission, if you do not like the answer you get from the commission, you can appeal your case to city council. So there's always, up to the city council level, there's always an opportunity to still try to make your case and see if you can get the approval. ultimately, I think the clear message I want to share with everyone is it's easier to follow the guidelines. Your life is easier. The permitting process is faster. Permitting process is cheaper because it's more expensive if you have to go to HPC than if you can do something at staff level. So that's the best guidance I have for you on the roof and just kind of general issues in terms of repairs and replacements on the district properties.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, nice chatting with you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, and now we have Henry Margosian. Henry, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Cool. Go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, good. I just wanted to bring up, because I heard a while ago people were discussing the replacement of windows and things like that. And one thing that came to my mind is just for anyone that's listening is to make sure that they have more of a, make sure their policies cover reproduction costs, because that's where, we always tend to think about, remodels and upgrades and things like that, but seldom we think about insurance claims. And as far as insurance claims, you have to have reproduction cost coverage in order to replace something the exact way it was, if that's what the requirement is for, the historic homes. So as far as replacement costs, the insurance company is only going to care about replacing a 1915 window with something that's available today, and most likely it's going to get into a code upgrade issue. But as far as keeping it, original, then they need to have that reproduction cost coverage. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think that would be very important for the homes that are designated as historic homes.
Okay, are you an insurance man yourself, or?
I'm an insurance consultant. I'm a public adjuster, and I do claims. So that's that's what comes to my mind when I'm thinking replacement or production cost.
It's an interesting point, and I've been doing these meetings for many years now, and no one's kind of raised that topic. So it's definitely something people can think about. I don't have any expertise or knowledge of it. Hopefully, we are only dealing with you and insurance people when there's a major disaster, which we hope never comes. And in that case, if there is a disaster, if we have a devastating earthquake or a house burns down, there's no requirement to rebuild it as it was. So the worst case scenario there is any new construction on the site is reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission to make sure it fits into the character of the neighborhood. But it would automatically be a non-contributor. But I don't want to go there because that's so big picture scary.
Definitely. Yeah, I understand.
Okay, well, thank you, Henry.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, so if any of you, and again, the weirdness of this speaking to the void, we don't know who's out there still, and we can't answer questions unless you call in. And so I think what we could do is wait about 5 minutes to see if we get any new calls coming in. I hope no one's joining the meeting this late in the game. So there's our call-in number. There's me and Andrew. And you need to ask Andrew something. Or tell us about the survey forms for your properties. That's often one of the biggest things that we talk about at these meetings is people asking questions about why am I a contributor or non-contributor. So if you haven't looked at your survey form, please do. And since you may not get to us during this meeting, I gave you my contact information. I'll put it up on the slide again. And why don't I just do that so that Andrew and I can take a sip of water or something, and you can, and by something I meant water or LaCroix, which is sitting in front of me. And go back to the slides. I'll put my contact information up, and hopefully you can see that. And then also, we have a call coming in. Thank you. It says it's ringing. So anyways, jot down my information. And then if you know people in your neighborhood who weren't able to attend this meeting and you think they'd be interested, the city's going to archive it on the City of Glendale YouTube channel. and the address to go straight to this meeting is that funky address that you see at the bottom of the screen. Okay. Oh, someone's asking a question for Andrew. I'm glad.
All right.
Let me stop sharing. Hold on. All right. It looks like Colin, who may be the same Colin who called at the beginning, but I'm not sure. So let's see. And then, hey, Colin, are you on? You there?
Yes, it's me again. Hi, Jay. How are you doing? Thanks for the whole presentation. I do have a question for Andrew.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So in the survey forms, there is a survey type that is intensive or reconnaissance, and I'm just curious what the differences are in terms of intensive versus a recon.
Sure. So a reconnaissance survey, the differentiation really has to do with how intensive, I guess, the survey is. So a reconnaissance survey is usually what we call a windshield survey. You may have heard that term before. And typically what that is we do everything kind of from a very slowly moving car, or we are on foot, but we really just briefly look at each property. We don't look at permit records. It's kind of a once. The National Park Service calls it a once over lightly survey. So that's a reconnaissance survey. An intensive survey is what we did for this project. It's very property specific. So we do a little bit kind of deeper digging and analysis into each particular building, which is what we did for this survey. Does that answer your question?
Okay, yeah, it does. I kind of guessed it was that, but I just wanted to make sure because sometimes, words can mean different things and under different circumstances. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
And Colin, I'll keep talking about that issue just for a second, just to see if anyone else wants to call in, because I was just talking to some colleagues today, and I wish there were 3 categories there, because Andrew just mentioned an intensive survey. We do permit research for historic districts to see when additions might have been made, to see if something's a contributor or not. But historic district surveys are really focused on, is it a contributor or is it not a contributor? And then also putting together the list of character defining features, which are the things that we're going to try to protect over the years through the district. But there are other kinds of surveys where you go onto the property, you look closely at the rear and the side facades, you do history research into who lived there, did any events happen there? So there's kind of a higher level of intensive survey than what we typically do for a historic district. So I sometimes think it would be nice if we had intensive district and reconnaissance or something like that, because district surveys are kind of a hybrid and they're a different animal. So. And we do have a caller, and it looks like it's another reprise call from Alina, maybe saying her street is not on the survey, but I don't know if that makes sense. So, hi, Alina.
Hi, I'm sorry. I was trying to go and see, look up my house, and Grandview is not listed for the South Cumberland Heights.
Oh, well, I can't say, I can't access my computer right now. It'll be too complicated. I will look into that. It should have been. I don't know why it wouldn't be, but it may have gotten dropped somehow. So okay. I will look for that and work with our web person to make sure that gets put up there. But okay, as you know, your house. And let me double check, because when we talked before, I don't remember if we talked about, if you want to share your address, you don't have to, but if you do, I can tell you right now if it's a contributor.
It is a contributor. Yeah, I just wanted to look at the details.
No, I'm sorry. I was thinking of a different house. Yes, your Monterey Revival is definitely a contributor. So, okay, sorry about the oversight. I'll see what went wrong, and we'll try to fix that as fast as we can.
Okay, so just go back to that QR code later, like give it until like whenever, tomorrow, next day.
Yeah, give us a day or two, because I don't have control over the website, and I don't know what my colleagues' calendar looks like. So hopefully by the end of the week or early next week, we'll have it fixed. And then, okay, then if you just send me an email, and then I could just email you directly your survey form just to get it to you faster. But obviously we need to fix it also.
And I'll do that. And one more question. What happens between now and then the next meeting?
We're going to take the comments that we've heard, and I've also gathered comments that people have emailed in, and I'm going to kind of summarize those, put them into a list, and then we're going to share those with the Historic Preservation Commission. We're going to share some of the topics that came up during our discussion tonight. And then ultimately, HPC is going to be reviewing the 2 surveys. They're going to take into account any of the comments, which nothing we've heard tonight is too shocking. It's not going to lead to any major changes. And then they're going to decide whether to authorize sending out the petitions into the community, which the proponents are going to distribute. And we talked about how that's going to happen electronically this year. In the past, generally, once we reach this point, it would be highly unusual for HPC not to move forward. And I can't think that we've seen anything suggesting that they might have any reason to, but until their vote happens, I can't say. But that's the next step. And then we have a petition period that can last a month to 6 months. In some cases, it's lasted a little longer than that. It really depends how quickly we can get mobilized with the proponents to do the online petition distribution and signatures and all that. So there's a little uncertainty. Once the petitions come in, however, it's pretty quick. It's usually a 2 to 3 month process after that. All right?
Okay. All right. Okay. So I'll email you my address and go from there. Thank you so much, Jay. Thanks a lot.
All right, cool.
Okay.
All right. Alina looks like our last caller. We waited a few minutes before to give any stragglers a chance. Gone. I appreciate Andrew's assistance in putting together a couple of great surveys. We're going to make any adjustments that we need to make before it goes to HPC. I guess I sort of said that to Alina, but not as clearly as I just did. And want to thank most of all you guys who are participating, to the callers. We had good questions and hopefully you got decent answers. And then to anyone who is just observing, hopefully you learned something or confirmed some of your views one way or the other at least. And like I said, please get in touch if you have other questions in the future. It's part of my job. You are actually paying me through paying your taxes to answer these questions. So I have absolutely no way to avoid them. So thank you very much. So, and now we will close the meeting, but that's going to be fun to see if I know how to do that. So thanks, Andrew. Since you're the one, thanks, Eric, for being in the background, and GTV.